and welcome to Boys Town. My name is Father Stephen Bass, and I'm the president of Boys Town. Now, for those of you here today, you may be wondering, how did Boys Town become a town? Well, 100 years ago, when Father Flanagan started working with street kids, he welcomed kids of every race, every nationality, and every religion to live together. And that was in direct opposition to the Jim Crow laws at the time. And so they kicked him out of Omaha. And then he went to the middle of a cornfield and started his own town. Welcome to Boys Town.
My name is John Mollison, and I'm an aviation artist and part of the Old Guys and Their Airplanes production crew. And today we're going to be having a premiere of our film, Who's the Guy in Back? And the reason we're here is because Who's the Guy in the Back happens to be John Mollison, an alumni from Boys Town. Now, I want to let you know there are two John Mollisons. I like to tell people that I'm the handsome one, but you can judge for that in a few moments, because when we get done with the film, we're going to have Colonel Mollison right here, as well as another highly decorated Vietnam War veteran backseater, Colonel Warren Eastman. And we're going to be taking questions. I can tell you right now, I get questions from all over the viewing public, all over the world, and we've already gotten some great insight. People who want to learn history from the people who made it, which is the best way possible. So get ready to watch the film. Rick, kick the tires and light the fires.
Every airplane I draw starts with questions like, what did it look like? Why is it significant? When did it fly? And always, who flew it?
Here you go, John. Well, John, a lovely lady would like to say hello.
Oh my gosh, look at that thing. It has been a few years. 40 years to be exact, since I last sat in one of these. That is a beautiful bird. Well, here it is. A little on the dusty side, but still ready to go. Let's take off.
Originally, this airplane, an F-4 Phantom from the Vietnam War, was drawn to commemorate the pilot. His name was Jonathan Hayes. And in Jonathan's case, he was especially significant in that he was awarded 5 Distinguished Flying Crosses for combat action. That's a big deal. But if you look closely at the cockpit, Jonathan shared the space with someone else. I'm sure the pilot up front was the rock star, but what did that other guy do? So I dug around, and I was stunned to find out that the guy in back shared my name. There are two John Mollisons. So, of course, I saw myself in the back seat for obvious reasons. And then I wondered, who is that guy? And so I found out.
You know, you were born in Italy,
Yep.
and that was 1946, right after the war.
Yeah. My dad was an American soldier. My mom was an Italian war bride, whom he liberated from Rome. And I was born down in Naples, where the Army hospital was. And then in June of 46, boarded a ship, the SS Vulcania, and 2,500 war brides and babies headed to the U.S. through Ellis Island. And then we took a train from, she and I, and she spoke hardly any English, took a train from New York to Redwood City, California.
And your dad, what was
Well, he was still over in Italy, and then he joined, I think, whenever they decommissioned everybody, let him out of the service.
If I've learned anything, it's the American dream isn't something you automatically get. Instead, the American dream is really a mindset that anybody can achieve, but it's got to be supported.
Yeah, it was a different dream. My dad was kind of a footloose and fancy-free guy. He had wandering ideas, and so we moved from California to Elko, Nevada, and then Carson City, Nevada, then to Roosevelt, Utah, then to Provo, Utah, and then all of a sudden he hauled us off to Texas. My dad had built this house, you could call it that. And had it all tar papered up as kind of a one-room house, and then he left. So, and we were out there middle of winter, and we were sitting huddled around this wood stove in the house. You know how the plains in Texas get snow? Oh, miserable. And we ended up in Plainview, Texas, and we were there for a while, and then we were, the four oldest of us were taken up and put in an orphanage in Lubbock until they're almost getting ready to adopt us out. My mom went and got us back out, and we moved into Lubbock. And my mom was doing the best she could to take care of us. One of the things that helped me out is my mother was an extremely positive woman. I mean, she was never, ever pessimistic. It didn't matter what condition we were in. There was always food on the table. There was always laughter in the house. There was always love in the house. And the Child Protective Services in Lubbock had decided that my mom had too many kids to take care of, and so they were going to split us up. She got a hold of the diocese in Lubbock, the Catholic diocese, and my brother and I came in from playing one day, and there were a couple of priests in the house. Had this little book of pictures of Boys Town, kids playing ball and fishing in a lake and telling us stories about it, and they said, well, what do you think, boys? Boy, it looks real nice, Father. Well, 3 days later, my brother Art and I were on a Greyhound bus, 9 years and 11 years old, to Omaha. And probably that was the door that opened a chapter in my life where I got to be where I am today.
Two things struck me about John's story. The first being his overwhelmed mom facing too many mouths to feed, so she feels like she has to let two of them go. And the second is that John and his brother, they had little choice other than to just accept their fate. It's a recipe for a tragic headline. But that tragic headline didn't happen. The boys were being sent to Boys Town in Omaha, Nebraska, and Boys Town set John up for a completely new flight plan.
You know, I was always interested in flying, but I was going to be a music teacher. I was going to be a band teacher. I was in music at Boys Town. I played violin, played trumpet.
You sang too, didn't you?
Sang in a choir, toured the United States, played viola in the orchestra, did all of that stuff. And so, you know, it was natural for me just to go become a music teacher.
So when did you become interested in the military?
Well, in 1964, when you went to a land-grant college, you had to choose for your first 2 years an ROTC unit to be in. I was looking around this place called Vietnam out there, and I knew the guys that were going in the Army were going to be slugging around in the jungle with rifles. The guys in the blue suits are going to be flying jets and sleeping in air-conditioned rooms and getting paid a little bit more. So I ask for the blue suit. And that's what, that's where it ended up. I have had full intentions of just going into the Air Force, do my tour, and come back and be a music teacher. But once I got in, I was hooked.
It's a dark, ironic thought, but efficiency in weapons design, it's a good thing. In the 1950s, technology had great promise to improve weapons delivery, especially considering that most of the bombs dropped during World War II strategic bombing campaigns didn't actually hit their targets. So by the end of the Vietnam War, one jet could do what a whole squadron of World War II bombers could do, and put a whole lot fewer people at risk. But for that one jet to do its job, it needed more than a pilot. It needed a guy in back.
Of course, I had wanted to be a pilot, and it didn't work out. And it was very early in the program. But, I looked at it and said, okay, what's the next best deal? And you can't just hang your hat on a failure. Because if you're hanging on to it, it's going to drag you down. Show up in nav school, and my navigation grades were excellent. I had good navigation in the air grades, but my academic grades suffered a little because of that one. Well, I'll tell you, I got a 35 on a test. Didn't work real well for the average. So we had to fill out a dream sheet. So I filled out a dream sheet that said fighter, 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 all the way across. Bases, everything. So our section advisor was a neat guy. He said, you guys should be in fighters. So there were several of us at the bottom of the heap out of 70 guys. And there were 16 F-4s that came down, 8 F-4s and 8 RF-4s. And I got one of the F-4s. And he just looked at us, he says, you guys can't navigate, we're the darn. So we're putting you in fighters. And I said, yes.
When it comes to American fixed-wing aircraft in the Vietnam War, the F-4 Phantom is the icon. Originally, it was designed for the Navy, but in keeping with the do more for less idea of Vietnam War economy, the U.S. Air Force was also brought into the Phantom fold. Now, in context with the backseater story, the Navy and Marines called their backseaters RIOs, R-I-O, or Radar Intercept Officers. The Air Force called them Whizzos, WSO, Weapons Systems Officers. Aside from the fact that only the Air Force Phantoms actually had control sticks in the back seats, Navy, Marine, and Air Force backseaters had the same job, assisting the pilot with the complicated tasks of everything from weapons to navigation to the all-important second set of eyes. But they all shared the same nickname, GIB, G-I-B, for guy in back.
The most important part of it is communication, back and forth between the two cockpits. The airplane is built as a crewed airplane, so there's a division of duties. And so there's certain things I have to do, certain things that the pilot has to do. For the most part, the radar work is done back here, in air to air, and in air to ground, it's mostly almost all done back here, for navigation and target acquisition and the like.
So could the pilot do his job without you?
Oh, yeah, but in terms of doing the mission, you have to employ the entire weapon system. You need two guys to do it.
When I found out that Jonathan Hayes and John Mollison were each awarded a Distinguished Flying Cross on the same mission in March of 1971, I thought, cool, one drawing covers two stories. But then I realized that March 8, 1971 coincided with one of the bloodiest moments of the Vietnam War. And I thought, well, that moment was called Lam Son 719 or Lam Son 719. And here was the idea. American helicopter pilots were to fly South Vietnamese infantry into Laos to cut the Chi Minh Trail, ending the supply of communist war goods from north to south. It was also intended to prove that South Vietnamese military was capable to do ground fighting themselves, a big step in getting the U.S. out of Vietnam altogether. Hayes and Mollison were lucky. They were flying fixed-wing Phantoms. For the U.S. Army helicopter crews and the South Vietnamese infantry, it was a disaster. I asked John if he believed his combat action was any help at all during the operation, and he winced. He said, "Well, we tried." And then he described the mission.
At this point in time, March 8th, the South Vietnamese were in retreat. And we were scheduled to lay a smoke screen down between the bad guys and the South Vietnamese so they could airlift them out with helicopters. That particular mission, we showed up. It was a 4-ship. The weather was crummy. It was raining. Ceiling was down to 800 feet. Nobody was doing anything. You know, we had this smoke, and you really can't use it for a whole lot else. So we were going to take it back, and then we get a call through Airborne Command and Control aircraft, and they were kind of battle controllers, who basically says, "Does anybody have anything that can burn on the ground?" And our flight lead, a guy named Gar Gerard, zips through his manual and figures out that, hey, if we drop this stuff at below 25 feet, these little smoke canisters won't turn into smoke, but they'll burn white phosphorus on the ground. We said, yeah, we've got some stuff we can put down, but we need to get to where the forward controller is. So we head west out towards Laos, and we find a hole in the clouds, and we drop down below the ceiling and flying basically around 500-600 feet and vectoring in towards the forward air controller. It turns out to be his last mission in country before he heads home. So we get down the area and we find him, and he's put down a couple of smokes.
Which essentially marks
the
where
target.
you need to bring
Right.
your ordnance or
Right.
whatever you're bringing. Okay.
And so Gerard sets us up in opposing red strike patterns. They were 2-ship going this way, essentially over the target area. And so John and I are flying, and we're in the left-hand orbit. We're coming over the target, and we're down to 25 feet or below. And so we're dropping this stuff out of the canister. It comes out of tubes in the back. Parachute won't open. It needs 25 feet to open.
So you're below 25 feet.
Yeah. And these little canisters then drop on the ground and ignite, and they're burning white phosphorus. Well, it turns out this is a camouflaged ammunition dump on the Ho Chi Minh Trail area. There's a guy down there, I can still see him to this day, standing by what looks like a blue Ford stake bed truck, 1950s version. He's down there with his AK-47. As we're pulling off, he's firing his AK-47. I mean, you can see the guy. It's just because we're pulling off at around 20 feet, 25 feet. But he hasn't got enough lead on us to do anything. We make several passes, drop all our smoke bombs. As we're exiting, flying out and headed back to Phuket, the FAC is just going nuts. I can't believe this. The place is blowing up. The whole world is blowing up down here because this stuff set all that ammunition dump on fire. And it actually blew up for about 3 days.
Plus a success.
Yeah, it was
unexpected success.
Yeah, we were able to use what we had, and thankfully we had a smart guy in the flight lead who knew that we could do that.
Did you think, we just did something that is going to get us a medal?
Nah, it was a mission. I think we just excited that we could support the guy. We're probably more excited about the forward air controller on his last mission, getting that kind of results.
Right. In today's world, a whole culture based around self. We don't necessarily have that culture based around mutual cooperation or mutual support. And I think what you see it in is like in a TikTok video or Facebook's, we're posting about ourselves, but we don't often post how we are working together for something else,
Yeah, it's kind of symptomatic of the evolution of our society. It's easy to put out a TikTok video or something else because you have no accountability for what you're doing. You're not accountable to anybody. You just throw it on a wall. And you don't have to stand up and defend what you've just said or done. When you work in a system like this with 2 people, you're accountable. You're accountable to the guy in front. The guy in front's accountable to the guy in back. And together, we're all accountable to the team, the squadron. Makes a huge difference, and it's a telling difference in the depth of character that is the difference, I think, between the TikTokers and the folks who are out there really doing the mission.
I've never met a war lover, at least among people who've actually experienced war, but I have met warriors, and they're quick to point out some of humanity's best traits: cooperation, trust, and a humble respect for the help of others who do what they can't. I asked John if he held a grudge about being sent to Boys Town. The answer was quick and firm: no. It took a lot of courage for his mom to give up a child, and Boys Town was no remedial resource. Instead, it was a place that picked up the slack, filled in the gaps, and set John on his way to become a leader far beyond what many from even whole families even dream. So who is the guy in back? You never know until you need him. And then you never forget.
We are live. We are live in Boys Town, and we're here with Colonel John Mollison and Colonel Warren Eastman. And when I gave the opening comments, I said, I thought, there's two John Mollisons. And I said, well, I think I'm the good-looking one. Well, I don't know if you know this, but, again, we are taking text questions from people around the world. And there's a number up on the screen that we can put up. And when you see that number and you want to have a question of these two guys, well, I get it on my iPad. And I have to tell you, Colonel Mollison, I was wrong. You're evidently the better looking one. Okay. Well, as far as interacting with history, asking questions of people who've actually made history, it's part of the old guys in their airplanes and distinguished flying cross society method. And I know that there are some people in the studio audience here who would like to ask questions. And if you could come up, we've got plenty here on my screen, but we'd like to address the Boys Town opportunity first. So now would be a good time to come on up to the microphone. But while that's happening, I have a question for you, John. You were here and you were in high school. You were here at Boys Town for, 8 years?
Almost 7.
7 years. And you think about your life, is it weird to see films being made about you, or is it something that you can just take with confidence?
Well, it is. It's an honor. I'm humbled by the fact that somebody is interested in my life, and so it's more humbling than anything, and it's certainly an honor.
Well, some of your future alumni are out in the audience, and they have questions.
Fantastic.
So we'll just the first one can come up here. You bet.
My question is, how long does it take to get your plane ready?
I didn't hear that.
How long did it take to get your plane ready?
Well, the work started long before we went on the flight. A schedule would come out, and they would identify the airplane, and then the people that really made it all work were the maintenance guys, the crew chiefs, the people who loaded the bombs, that worked the electronics and refueled the airplane. So probably 3, 4, 5, 6 hours before we even looked at the airplane, there were probably 10 or 15 people at least who had a hand in getting that airplane ready to go. So we typically would go out on a mission, and we would brief about an hour and a half or so before takeoff time, and we would not see the airplane until probably 15, 20 minutes before we took off. But the work that went on ahead of time was what made the mission work, because it took that huge team to get one airplane into the air. Great question.
Also,
How fast did your airplane, your F-4
Well,
fly?
the fastest I've been in the F4 is Mach 2.1, which is 2.1 times the speed of sound, and that was at 40,000 feet. On the ground, the fastest have probably been about 700 miles an hour, close to the ground, not on the ground, of course. We took off the airplane, Warren, what is it, about 150, 155?
100, yeah, no, it's
100
150 to 180 knots,
Yeah,
depending.
150 to 180 knots.
The heavier you were, the
Yeah.
higher speed it took.
To take off. And
Yeah.
a lot of calculations going into the takeoff speed, but somewhere in that arena, and we landed around 150 knots.
My question's for filmmaker John Mollison. I really liked the plane that you drew. Are you professionally trained, or how did you get into military art?
Well, I am personally trained. I am not professionally trained. I just started doodling airplanes when I was 3, and my school grades show that I really never stopped doodling airplanes. So not professionally trained, and I've been drawing airplanes since I could hold a crayon.
Hi, my question is, how did Boys Town help you prepare for the military?
How did Boys Town prepare you for the military?
Well, Boys Town gave me a sense of control in my own life. When I got here, I didn't know why I was here. I was perfectly happy at home, but the situation was that I needed to be at Boys Town along with my younger brother. So we got here, and one thing I learned immediately was that if you wanted to do something, you had to go out and work for it. We all had jobs, and in school, you got recognized for the work that you did, and you got rewarded for it. And those kind of things built in me the confidence in myself to make decisions for me and for my life. And so when I was ready to graduate from Boys Town, I already knew what I wanted to do. I was going to be a music teacher. And because I was involved in music, I spent a lot of time in this building. And so I went off to music school, and all of a sudden another door opened, and that was the Air Force and flying. And if you wanted it, you had to work for it, and so that's what I did. But that behavior, if you will, was what got me to where all the goals I was able to achieve, because Boys Town taught me that I could achieve anything if I work at it, even if I failed. And I did fail along the way a number of times, but I didn't hang on to that failure. I moved on and learned from it and went on to the next challenge. Great question.
My question is for filmmaker John Mollison. What inspired you to tell these kinds of stories?
Wow, that question is, we don't have enough time, so I will be really brief with that. I recognized in my professional career that I needed to learn more from people who are more experienced than me. And since I had an interest in American history and I had an interest in aviation, I started to, through my drawings, meet the people like Warren and Colonel Mollison, and wanted to learn what made them tick. And they were older than me, so they were smarter than me, or at least more experienced and more knowledgeable in the way things worked. So I thought, well, I can kill a bunch of birds with one stone here. I can satisfy my history geek, I can satisfy my aviation interest, and I can also satisfy my knowledge of just how to be a better person through somebody else's stories. Thank you. That's a great question. Thank you.
My question is for filmmaker John Mollison. I was just wondering how long it took you to film The Guy in the Back Seat.
Okay. Well, we started concepting this film in last summer. And what do you mean concepting? The Warren Eastman with the Distinguished Flying Cross Society, I work with them to help tell their stories. Colonel Mollison was been awarded the DFC, actually 3 of them. And we wanted to figure out how do we bring his best self to the screen. So that took probably 3 months of just kind of jamming in our heads, what kind of angle do we want the story to take? And then when we actually went to Marshfield Museum in Southern California, they had an F-4 Phantom that we could climb inside and film. That was 3 days. And then editing it took us a month and a half.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
I have 2 questions for you, sir. One, what was your motivation or drive to keep going when life got hard?
What was your motivation or drive to keep going when life got hard for you?
I guess the things I learned at Boys Town, because you never, I never felt that I couldn't do anything here, the looking at moving ahead, always looked ahead and saw, okay, where do I want to be? What do I need to do to get there? And how hard do I need to work to get there? And I think putting in the hard work and the study, learning about where you're going and what you want to do, really helped me to move forward in all my different career choices. Along in the Air Force, I made a lot of different choices. One of the first ones when I got to Germany after Vietnam, I was a snack bar officer. That's what first lieutenants got to do. And so we figured, okay, how can I have the best snack bar in the world? We did that. Then a job came open that was in charge of the life support shop, where you had several guys working for you, and it was a pretty good mission. So nobody wanted it. I raised my hand. I said, I want to be the guy in charge. And so I did that. And that's kind of the way I planned my career. I looked for the things that were interesting to me, that would make a difference in the Air Force and in my life. And then I chose to try to be the guy in charge. And I worked for it.
Also, who was your biggest mentor?
The biggest mentor? I had a number of them. My very first teacher here at Boys Town in the 6th grade was Miss Wickert. I'll never forget her. She, I loved to read. That was kind of, and you guys who are here, boys and girls, know that sometimes you need to escape Boys Town. So my escape from Boys Town was reading. And in the 6th grade, I started a book called The Black Stallion by a guy named Walter Farley. Well, he wrote a whole bunch of those books. Well, our little library up at the grade school only had one book in it, the first one. Well, Miss Wickert had the entire series at home. So as soon as I finished reading one book, she would bring me another one. And so it was that kindness that kind of motivated me. Then I got to, I had an English teacher in high school, Mrs. George. Her husband was the band teacher. And Mrs. George was giving out grades one day. I had pretty good grades. And there was, if you remember on the report cards, we got a grade for what we did, ABC. Then you got another section that said, if you're working to your potential and those kinds of things. Well, she gave me an A on working to my potential. And very cleverly, I went to her and said, I'm not really working real hard in your class. Well, she downgraded my grade. I learned from that, and I said, from now on, I'm going to work.
Sir. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
My question for you guys is, what was the max amount of G-force you guys pulled on any given mission?
Well, on any mission, I would say 8.5 Gs, because we over-G'd the airplane. I was on a mission up in the passes near North Vietnam, and we were dropping cluster bomb units, and we were using a system that was supposed to drop it automatically. Well, it wasn't working. So the pilot in front and I were both looking out because we were down in the valley and the guns were on the top, were shooting down at us. And we weren't paying attention to it about the fact that the bombs hadn't fallen off the airplane yet. And so we both looked and said, oh my God. We both grabbed the stick, wallowed up out of the valley, and I brought it home. We had to tell the maintenance people that we had over-G'd the airplane with a full load of bombs, which means they had to do a very deep inspection to see if we didn't crack any of the ribs and the steel and everything else in it. But the biggest number of G's I pulled was in an F-16. I was on a mission in the back seat, instantaneous 9 G's. It'll rub you out. Warren, how about you?
I pulled 9 G's in an F-15. So.
Yeah, and but we train for that. They have a thing called a centrifuge, and they put you in this little bubble, and it's on a big arm, and it spins you around, and typically, you get up. If you're not ready for it, you'll just go to sleep, just pass out, and because all the blood's running out of your brain. But if you're exercise, your strength, and you're ready for it, and you're grunting and doing all the right things, then you can sustain 9 G's for a little bit.
Can you describe also to the audience what G-force feels like at those heights?
What the G-force feels like? Well, your face droops like this. Everything droops. Everything, 9 times. If you were 200 pounds, 9 times 200 pounds, because that's what you would essentially be weighing.
Lift your arms very well.
You can't lift your arms very well. Now, the opposite of that is negative G's. And we've pulled a few of those where you just go floating in the cockpit. 1 or 2 negative G's. What happens in the cockpit, you see what's left behind because everything floats up, screwdrivers.
In terms of positive G's, for me, that I really noticed was how tight. You're wearing a G suit, which is like a pair of shaps, and they have bladders in them, and as you pull G's, those fill up to constrict the blood flow from going from your head down into your lower extremities. And it was how tight the G suit got when I was at 9 G's. I remember that. So
one of the things we did as we were particularly in training, as you prepared to pull G's, is you actually did a couple of G training turns. You pull into 4 G's, then you pull into 5 G's, just to acclimate yourself to the fact that you're going to end up pulling instantaneous G's, and so you're ready. So you don't want to black out when you're in a fight with somebody.
Thank you, and thank you for your service to our country.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right, I got a question here. This is from somebody who's obviously looked at the educator kit online. And if we can get a screen shot of what that looks like. Educator kit, by the way, is a free downloadable 2 PDFs of stories and background information, charts, graphs, cool stuff. But this is somebody who has a question for Warren, because Warren, you've got a page in that educator's kit which shows the contrast of a backseater's cockpit from your day in the Vietnam War in F-4, and then when you were a PhD and a doctor of aeronautical science, you look at the 2 cockpits, and I think we have a picture to share with the audience here. If you could show up picture number 9 and picture number 8, and just kind of cycle through them so you can see. This is the F-4 Phantom, and you look at all those gauges and dials. And then the next one is an F-15, that's number 8. And you just got some screens. So the question that we've got here is, if you're going through G's and you're spending your time looking at all these gauges, well, that takes one brain. But now they're replaced by screens. Did technology make your job easier, or is it just different?
By what you pick to put on which screen, you can tailor what information you're looking at depending on your phase of flight. You can change that. So in that sense, that's probably a lot more effective, but it's a different way of doing business. Typically in the F-4, you had all those, every function of the airplane has its own gauge or switch, and so you have to get used to looking at all those as you need the information and pick out the one you want, depending on what's important to you at the time.
Is it hard to look at gauges when you're going through G-forces?
No, but first of all, the F-4 didn't pull that many G's. It pulled maybe 5 to 7 depending. And it was a gradual onset compared to modern, especially F-16, which is instantaneous. F-15 is not quite instantaneous, but it's a lot faster than it was in the F-4. So as you were beginning to pull G's, you could, if you know, you're looking at something, the pilot's reacting, so he's starting to pull G's, but you feel the onset in an F-4 because it's more gradual.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you knew, depending on what you were doing, you may not need to look at all those gauges all the time. Or the radar scopes down here, it had a big like rubber cone that you looked into. You might have your head down though when you're looking at the radar and the guy decides to put G's, in which case your head's plastered into the radar scope. We've all been there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
you know, one of the things about the gauges, they're all hooked into a central system, and there's a light called a master caution light. So if there's a critical failure in one of those systems, it'll flip on a light. So you don't necessarily have to watch all the gauges all the time. And you know, and the and I don't know if you saw in the cockpit picture of the F-4, all of them had little red, yellow, and green tape lines on them, so you knew where the limits were. In the newer jets, the computer knows all the limits and can probably think ahead of things that are going to happen with the system. So in that case, it frees up the crewmen, the pilot, and in the case of the F-15E, the backseater to focus more on the mission issues as opposed to just the housekeeping, if you will, of the systems in the airplane.
Okay, this will be a question for both of you because I think you both we want both to comment. But did you ever get in a position where your pilot was doing something that you disagreed with, or that you felt the pilot shouldn't be doing? And if so, how did you react to it?
when we got back, I took it up with my ops officer, and I had to coach this guy through a bunch of stuff to get us back home because it was night, it was raining, the tankers had all gone home, and he didn't know that, and I had to coach him on how to get a min-fuel profile to fly back to our base. So that kind of stuff.
What is an in-fuel profile?
Minimum fuel. Well, we didn't have a tanker available because the tankers had gone home. However much gas we had, we were quite a ways back to our basic garage. So you have to fly a
fuel
minimum
economy.
Fuel profile that will conserve your fuel. I mean, you're going to burn fuel, obviously, but there's ways to. It's like your car. You can do things, set a constant cruise speed, and you minimize your fuel usage.
So were you more experienced then than the pilot? The pilot was obviously a new guy.
The pilot was a major. He was on his 4th combat tour, but he'd just gotten into F4s. He was brand new in F4s when he got there. So,
was there ever a pecking order, like the pilot felt like he was maybe better than the guy in the back seat?
I've flown with guys like that.
Yeah.
There were guys that had come out of single seat fighters that didn't necessarily want to have a back seater. The best results we got were from guys that had come in the F4 community and were used to working with a backseater, and you worked as a team. And if the way we did it over there, you typically had a primary assigned crew that you flew together most of the time, and you learned to be really good together as a team, and you knew how each of you thought in certain situations, and how, so it cuts down time and things like that because you're working with somebody that closely a lot.
Right. So, how about you with the pilot?
My first incident was in training. I was a second lieutenant. I was with an instructor pilot who had been a single seat fighter pilot, didn't much care for backseaters, and didn't much care to be an instructor. And we were on a night rocket mission. And rockets, pilots have a tendency sometimes to want to watch the rocket hit the target, especially at night, because when you fire them, there's a lot of, the rocket motor going down and everything. Well, there's certain altitudes you need to pull up before you hit, or you might hit the ground. And he was watching the rockets, and he blew through our pull-up altitude, so I grabbed the stick and pulled it back. And sure enough, we kind of wallowed out of pass, and he yelled at me and said, "Don't tell anybody about this." and turn off your microphone. I don't want to hear from you anymore. And so I went back and I spoke with the scheduler, and I said aloud as how he probably shouldn't schedule me with this guy anymore. So we had a heart to heart. Let me put it that way. The scheduler. But
So when you were flying missions, you got the front seat, back seat. I got two questions here. Number one, how long were you in the air in the airplane? And number two, how long could an F-4 stay airborne?
we had typically, when I flew both in Vietnam and in Thailand. In country in Vietnam, we didn't refuel as much as the folks that flew out of Thailand did. And so our typical missions were between an hour and a half to almost 2 hours, 2 hours at the outside, depending on our weapons load. But mostly we were working with troops in contact and interdiction targets in country in South Vietnam. But as far as the missions where you hit tankers, I mean, I've been on a 4.5 hour mission. As long as you keep gas in the airplane and the engines are running, you can stay up for a long time.
Yeah. The night missions, gunship escort, were probably could be 5 to 6 hours.
So the question is, looks like every astronaut gets asked this question too. You know it's coming. Where'd you go to the bathroom?
Well, first place we have a thing called a piddle pack, which is like it's a bag with a sponge in it, and it's got a thing that you can relieve into.
Did they show that on Top Gun Maverick?
No. but at the same time, we were all young and full of and it wasn't much of a problem in the mission.
We had when I was stationed in New Mexico, we had a commitment to set alert in Germany, and so we would take off from New Mexico and fly nonstop to Germany. And typically going over, it was about 11 hours. Coming back was around 13 hours, all of it in the airplane. But what we would do the couple of days before is we'd go on a certain high protein diet and prep that way, and then change our circadian rhythm. They black out all the windows in the dormitory, and we'd sleep during the day, and because we had switched that over. But yeah, and we used the piddle pack. And, but now we were on tankers we had the first tankers in Oklahoma City, some more in Boston, and another set south of Iceland, and then we coasted into Germany.
You got to be tired after those missions.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so let's
and first of all, they're very boring.
Yeah, what do? Do you carry books? Read?
Some people did. I carried music.
Yeah. Tape recorder.
You could plug a music player into your headset into the cord for your headset. There were adapters that were made, and so you had to take a cassette, because that's what we had in those days. But those were the days of early cassette players. So you'd have cassettes of your music, and you could play those, and it'd play in the intercom system. So that's one way.
The audience here, I don't think cassettes. We'll explain those later.
You can look it up online.
Okay, so all right, so you were awarded 2 DFCs,
yes,
and you were awarded 3 DFCs. Now, in the educator's kit, we've got a page dedicated to your DFC mission that you flew with Jonathan Hayes, and that's the story how I got connected to tell your story. But I'd like to start. I'd like to hear about that mission. I've got a question for you on that one. And then I've got a question for you. You've got 2 DFCs. Is there any particular DFC mission that comes to mind and like as the most impactful or the toughest, or however you would process it, and which one would it be?
The second one was, I'd say it's more interesting. I would never say a mission was more difficult. I mean, because you get on the schedule, you go fly. Sometimes they're what we called milk runs, meaning it was like no enemy reaction. You went and bombed some kind of target, you went home. And then there's other missions that were a lot more exciting, and there might be so exciting you get an award for it. Okay, but you never know that ahead of time until you show up at the target area. And so I was always felt I was on the same level of personal awareness for any mission. And it was the start of the dry season in Laos. So when the dry season started, the dry monsoon comes in. It takes them about a week for the enemy truck traffic to pick up big time.
Oh, on the Ho Chi Minh Trail.
On the Ho Chi Minh Trail.
Go in and blow up the trucks.
Where we were working. And so it was right at the start of and so when that starts out, the enemy reaction, anti-aircraft reaction really picks up.
And how do you know that? How do you know it?
Because you see it at night. I don't know about the daytime, but at night you can see it because they have tracers that shoot. If it's green tracer, it's 37 millimeter. If it's red tracer, it's 57 millimeter. So,
and that's the size of the shell. So
yes,
37's about that big, and 57.
Yeah, whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then you see an airburst.
You don't care. It's trying to kill you.
But so we went out and we were working with a gunship, an AC-130 gunship that has sensors that look at trucks on the trail, and there was a lot of enemy reaction. We were doing flak suppression for him. We still had ordnance, so we went back to the tanker and we contacted the air controller. He sent us up to a place called Mugia Pass, which is a pass from North Vietnam into Laos that meets the Ho Chi Minh Trail, the upper end of it. So it's typically a target-rich environment for us, but it's also a target-rich environment for them. They have a lot of what we call AAA air-to-air guns up there. So we went up there and we worked with a Ford air controller, and we got a lot of secondary explosions dropping our bombs, and we also had very heavy enemy reaction at the same time.
What is a secondary explosion? When you drop a bomb, the bomb blows up.
Yeah, so but then other stuff starts blowing. If you get ammunition or fuel or something like that, then it starts a fire and other things blow up on the ground from that fire.
Okay. So you're dropping these bombs. Roughly what altitude are you dropping these bombs from?
Well, we had a computerized bombing system in the F-4E at Karat. So we would roll in, we'd be probably good at least 10,000 feet above the target, whatever altitude it was. And then the bomb would come off when the computer said it was the right time, based on all the parameters of what we're doing. And then we would pull off so we didn't go below 4,500 feet above ground level, because that's what's called the small arms envelope. If you're below 4,500 feet, they can shoot the AK-47s at you. Unless it was troops in contact like he had on his mission. In that case, we wouldn't worry about that low altitude. We'd do whatever we need to do.
Whatever. And so when I was drawing the little diagram, and again, you have to check out the educator's kit, because that diagram, I truly struggled. How do you communicate an F-4 Phantom flying at 450 knots? Mm-hmm. Dropping ordnance at 25 feet. That's like a heartbeat, just a little tip of the nose, and you're a ball of flame on the ground. And you dropped those phosphorus canisters. How often did guys get that low?
I think that's the only time I knew of it. Simply because our mission really was to create a smoke screen. These little bomblets were designed to create a smoke screen in order to evacuate the South Vietnamese troops who were in retreat from the North Vietnamese troops. So when our flight lead decided that stuff could burn on the ground, created the parameter that we had to use. And so I don't recall any other times when we would purposely go out and schedule a mission to drop them below 25 feet.
Right.
But this was done because it was necessary and needed at that time. And it turned out it was quite a lucrative target.
Well, you remember the Vietnamese, the North Vietnamese or Viet Cong, whatever he might have been, firing at you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was protecting his job. He was the guard, I guess.
Yeah.
his job was to protect that area. And as we're coming across, you could see him, figure 25 feet is probably maybe halfway up this wall. So
wow,
you had a pretty good view of him, as he did of us. So, but we were going a lot faster than he was.
Right, and you think about it. Yeah, he was doing his job. Mm-hmm. When you look and you look out the side of the cockpit, do you think, oh, there's the enemy? I want to kill him. What were you thinking, or do you?
We were looking. We were interested in getting the bombs on our target, which was the ammunition dump. He really wasn't that much of a threat, unless, like I said, Warren had indicated the golden BB hit you.
Right.
But because of the speeds we were flying and the number of Gs we were pulling, he didn't have the physical ability to have put the bullet where we were going to fly.
Right. And you had said in the film that the target then blew up and burned for 3 days. Mm-hmm. How soon, when you're pulling off the target, did it just immediately light up? Or?
No, it was, we saw some secondary explosions. The forward air controller passed as we were leaving, he was watching stuff starting to explode. And then when we got results 2 or 3 days later, and they said the place is still blowing up. Because it was a pretty large ammunition dump, and it was camouflaged, had netting and leaves and stuff all over the top of it.
Pulling off a target at your dive bombing.
Yeah.
Well, as in your dive bomb pass, you're pretty predictable, but as you after your bombs release, we do what we call jinking, which is you're changing your direction and altitude a lot, as not staying predictable for people that are shooting at you. So
we're almost out of time, and we've got too many questions to ask. But there's a question that I'd like to ask both of you, and this I think is very fair, but it's kind of a break. And so I've learned this when you're talking to military people. Break means hold that thought. We're going to go to another one. Usually it means change the subject, but something like that. We had some comments on a comment that you made in the film about TikTok. And the question is you're looking back on your life and you see TikTok, you see social media. And so I think this is a question of somebody who wants to get your perspective and your perspective on social media. And if you think social media is positive or negative for youth, and if you think it's negative, what's the alternative based on your wisdom? And if you think it's positive, how is it positive? I think it's a fair question.
Yeah. Well, social media is positive. I mean, it's because it allows us to communicate. On the negative side, it takes away a lot of interpersonal communication. You can't look somebody in the eye and speak with them. And there comes a tremendous amount of responsibility that goes along with commenting on social media. And that's, part of that is accountability. You see sometimes where people will say ugly things about other people. They may not even know them, but they'll say ugly things about them. But there's no accountability. They're not going to discuss with the person that they're saying bad things about whether or not those are really true. They're sometimes, it can be misused certainly as a propaganda tool, and sadly I think we've seen it that way. But if it's used properly, it's a tremendous tool because it allows us to communicate with different cultures, different thoughts. People who are working on similar projects around the world can communicate with each other. It's a tremendous tool, but along with it comes a tremendous amount of responsibility and accountability.
I personally stay off of social media for my own personal stuff. The only thing I do on social media is to promote the DFC Society events. We existed well before social media, is my take, and I think you spend a lot. It's a time waster for me. I think it's a good thing for promoting businesses and organizations, certainly, like we're doing with the DFC Society. But personally, I have no need to be on social media. And I see a lot of things of people that go on social media that to announce some mundane thing that you think, well, it couldn't have existed until you put it on social media, right? Right. So that's kind of my take on it. But
all right, we got one last question, and John, and I think it should be said that when we produced this Old Guys in the Airplanes episode, we were not sponsored by Boys Town. All the love that Boys Town has gotten as a part of this film is just naturally from the story. I mean, this is the power of the organization. And so one of the things that we've gotten, or I've learned, one of the aspects of Boys Town is your sense of legacy and your sense of carrying on and always looking down the future. How can we do better? Now, so I want to leave the last question for you. I know there's a special kid in this audience. I know it's your grandson, Max. And if you were to give Max or any of these other wonderful young people in the audience just a closing bit of advice, what would it be?
Well, work hard, set your goals, don't let people put you down, care for other folks, be kind to them, and if they're not kind to you, accept their unkindness and move on, because there's more for you than to fight bitter fights. So it's a positive attitude, work hard, take what Boys Town, in my case, what Boys Town gave me is an underpinning for my life. It helped me make choices, and I know that those choices I may have made the wrong ones if it had not been for the training, the teaching, and the mentoring and the care that I got here at Boys Town. This Boys Town opened a whole set of different doors for me. My life is totally different than my brothers and sisters who didn't come here. And so I think just be kind to others, work hard, set your goals, and do good things for others.
Colonel Mollison, Colonel Eastman, thank you. Thank you for being here. This is how we learn history, from the eyes and minds of people who've made it. And
good.